The shocks like COVID-19, conflict and social unrest add to the complexity of the situation. And together they divert our attention away from development priorities, away from building resilience and trying to fix immediate issues. The impacts from these accumulating shocks combined with limited land and water resources are felt widely, in particular in this region and in particular in rural communities where dependency on water and land is very high and where alternative sources of food are limited. Hence, on the top of the revised global priority list should come the meaningful engagement with these communities, the key stakeholders, farmers and smallholders who are more at risk and are also the best agents of change. Solution for transforming the combined role of land and water in global food system should also include embracing innovation and technology, a fundamental element in enhancing the management options and in increasing productivity and production levels. Also, the transition can be achieved without proper planning and management of land, soil and water through effective governance that promote sustainable management. The Near East and North Africa region, where most of the Arab world is located, is definitely the most land and water scarce region of the world, with 0.16 hectare of cropland per capita against a global average of 0.20, and per capita available at 9% of the global average. The agriculture sector remains an important pillar of the economy in several countries of the region, contributing 14% of regional GDP, and except oil-rich countries, and providing employment to 38% of the economic active population. So this is really a sector that has an incredible important social and economic role. This region is also the world's region predicted to be most affected by climate change, which is already altering our productivity, our crops, our animal, and our growth cycles. Together with several regional partners, we have recently published a report on the state of land and water resources for food and agriculture in the Near East and North Africa. The report analyzes in detail the implications of climate change for food and agriculture and is available on our website. To address future challenge, agriculture production will need to be transformative. And what at FAO, in our strategic framework, we tend to use the words of what we call the 4 Bs. The 4 Bs are not little animals, pollinators. They are better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life for all, leaving no one behind. But still, the Bs are also extremely important to make this happen. An increase in innovative approach in response to the impact of climate change is urgently required, and climate-smart practices must be scaled up and out. So in light of the above, in June of this year, FAO launched its newly inter-regional technical platform on water scarcity, which has a beautiful acronym, IRTPWS. Please remember that. It's a gateway to coping with water scarcity, to advance water-related action by fostering the interoperability of intervention and by synergizing initiatives, sectors, and approaches at all levels and scale. My colleague will introduce the initiative in a moment. So let's conclude by saying that what we try to get from this session is addressing a few major questions. First, flagging the main water, food, and climate-related issues at the ground level that need attention in research and innovation. Second, exploring ways to advance the work in water, agriculture, and climate communities with a clear notion of how and where to intervene. Third, identifying mechanisms to advance multi-level inclusive governance and participation. And fourth, identifying entry points to upscale investments and mobilize resources. For this, we will first have a presentation on the inter-regional technical platform on water scarcity, and we will then go for a panel discussion where we will look at the governance, the technical, the financial aspects to be addressed. So let me just introduce my colleague Heba Al-Hariri, who is an advisor of FAO regional office in the Water Scarcity Initiative, and who will present the platform. Heba, the floor is yours.
I think it's working now. Thank you, John Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you to speak about new opportunities for collaboration and inter-regional joint work to scale up water-related action for food and water security. Okay, sorry.
It works.
Okay, so as we approach the 27th session of the Conference of Parties, the discourse on climate change and its impacts on all development sectors is actually heating up. As we heard this morning, it is fueled by alarming results and statistics that are becoming, that are making us all more and more concerned and can no longer be ignored or overlooked. With respect to the impact on water scarcity and food production, the 2021 release of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change IPCC Working Report in its assessments on the observed impacts of climate change on human systems indicated that roughly half of the world population currently experiencing severe water scarcity for at least some part of the year due to climatic and non-climatic driver. Following the release of this report, the UN Secretary General issued a statement which he called this report a code red of humanity and emphasized the importance of non-structural interventions such as early warning systems, as we heard this morning, and in conjunction with infrastructural advancements in order to reduce the human costs of climate change impacts. Last year, as well as mentioned by John Mark in his opening remarks, FAO in its global report on the status of land and water also indicated that about 1.2 million people live in areas where severe water shortage and scarcity challenge agriculture. It also pointed out this map on the SDG indicator 6.4.2, highlighting the water stress that was calculated globally based on all sectors and based on the major basins. As you can see in this map, it clearly underlines that the MENA region actually falls in a critical water stress ranging from 75% to 100%, and it outlined that this was due to the very limited use of non-conventional water resources uses in agriculture, particularly on water reuse and desalination. Similarly, the MENA region State of Water report that was issued this year also revealed strong correlation to the previous, but they also highlighted several important elements or strategic priorities that needs to be tackled urgently in order to ensure that we are actually properly coping with climate change. It highlighted that currently, the land and water resources need safeguarding from deterioration and depletion, stating that they have built to a point where the productivity of key agricultural systems is actually compromised and livelihoods are now threatened. They also indicated that the interconnected systems of land, soil, and water were stretched to an extreme limit. This necessitated a number of interregional priorities that required immediate attention, starting from the urgent need for integrated solutions to be planned at all levels and integrated at all scales, the importance also of having a proper, inclusive, and adaptive land and water governance, and to start focusing on how to ensure that our water and agriculture policies are more inclusive and targeting the vulnerable communities and the more affected communities. They also indicated the need for technical and managerial innovations that can help in addressing those priorities and actually accelerate the transformation, as apparently the business as usual concept is no longer efficient. They also highlighted the need for investments to be redirected towards social and environmental gains derived from land and water management. In response to the above and to accelerate the ways towards meeting these priorities, FAO launched in June 2022 its interregional technical platform as a center of excellence that can foster interregional partnerships of international organizations, national and local governments, and also NGOs to help them to work together across silos in an action-oriented and results-based approach to overcome these complex challenges within the context of water scarcity and food and climate security, and with a special focus on the affected communities. The launch event was politically supported by the presence of Her Royal Highness Prince Basma bint Ali, the Princess of Jordan, who recorded a message indicating that beyond the technical responses, we highly need collaboration and effective cooperation in the field of the implementation of the different interventions in order to ensure that we are building the proper positive momentum to address the water scarcity challenges in all countries and particularly in the MENA region. The launch event was also witnessed the presence of FAO Secretary General and representatives from the 5 regional offices of FAO. It also witnessed the presence of representatives from the civil society, from academia, from water user associations and youth, who all demonstrated their support for the mission, for the platform main mission. The platform main mission focused on strengthening knowledge exchange and supporting the development of innovative tools to scale up action and to address the complex development challenges, with a special focus on goals 6 and 2, but also considering the interlinkages across other related SDGs. We have identified 5 main areas of work to operationalize our platform, focusing on supporting the international agenda by leading and facilitating the discussions on governance reforms, unpacking the complex issues, and in response, or in a practical response to this particular work area, we are organizing several technical interregional sessions within Cairo Water Week to speak about the different complex issues and to ensure that we are bringing the different communities, the water community, climate community, and agriculture community, to speak together and to identify priorities that can help in addressing different issues at the same time. The second area of work will focus on knowledge management, technology, and innovations, and ensuring that we are pooling experiences from the different regions and replicating and scaling up the successful best practices across different countries. Inclusion and participation, as we are very keen to ensure that the platform represents a strong voice for the vulnerable communities, for small farmers, for youth, for young professionals as well. And we are actually happy to contribute also this year through Cairo Water Week in the African Development Forum, and to be part of the closing ceremony, having a direct dialogue with our African young professionals to understand their priorities and to see how we can better reflect those priorities in our activities. Also, capacity building and engagement is one of the main areas that we focus on, in addition to scaling up investments and innovation by supporting the grant matchmaking, the funding alliances, and cost sharing. The platform in general have several overarching considerations that makes it a kind of unique, represented or reflected on the importance of fostering coherence between the regional, national, and the local policies, also helping in promoting on-job trainings, not just regular capacity building activities, but we want to make sure that the science is actually given and practiced within in the field. Also, the importance of supporting inclusion and gender equality is one of our top priorities as well. To help in structuring the activities of the platform was designed through different mechanisms that includes first a steering committee, which includes representatives from the 5 regional offices of FAO, as well as the core partners of the platform, which is going to be also supported by a technical advisory committee that includes the scientists and the experts who are working on the field to identify the gaps and the crucial areas of work. Both are going to be working together to develop an annual participatory action plan that includes some long-term and short-term goals for the platform. And this is also supported by a very interactive website which was launched this year to help in demonstrating the activities, reflecting the latest best practices, and also the opportunity to write specific blogs from scientists, from experts, from also political leaders that highlights what are the main gaps and what needs to be done. We have several levels of engagements for our partners, starting from the basic level on by just sharing knowledge and information through our contributing partners who contributes to the platform. So if you go to this platform, you're not going only to see FAO products on this platform, you're going to be able to look at the products and the publications of different actors from different regions. The second level is the joint research, specific partners who are working with us to develop joint research activities, joint publications, moving to the strategic partners who are working with us on developing the main goals of the platform and trying to mobilize the right resources in order to work on joint activities. And finally, the funding alliances for partners who are willing to invest in the activities of this platform and to fund the activities of the platform. This is basically a slide that shows the current partners, and it has been actually growing during the last couple of months, and we are very happy to have some of our partners in this session today who are going to be speaking within the next panel on their vision on the different elements and how their also agencies are willing to contribute to the platform and its activities. Just my final slide. This is, in short, some of the activities that we're undertaking this year, starting from the launch event, our participation in Cairo Water Week through different sessions, our participation in the African Young Professional Forum, and now we are also trying to be engaged within the Climate and Water Pavilion through our online forums that will enable the different visitors of the platform to write comments, to reflect on their vision on different elements elements which can be also communicated during the Climate and Water Pavilion. This year also we will try to finalize the formulation of the steering committee in order to operationalize it, as well as the technical advisory committee as well. And we hope that we can, by the end of this year, endorse the annual plan for next year for 2023. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heba, for this presentation of this platform. And as you could see, this is much more than just a website. It's really an opportunity for collaboration, for partnership around such an important subject. We will now move towards a panel discussion, and as I indicated earlier, we want to investigate different angles of the issue: the governance angle, the financial angle, the technical angle, etc. For this, we are very pleased to have with us three distinguished panelists who will help us discussing these issues. Starting with Ambassador Shahira Warbi, who is the Chief of Natural Resource Sustainability, Partnership and Disaster Risk Reduction at the League of Arab States. And thank you for joining us. I heard that you had to make a statement in another session, so I'm very glad to have you with us now. We have Roberto Martin Hurtado, who supports the Secretariat of the Union for the Mediterranean as a water economics advisor, leading the development of the financial strategy for water, as well as a number of regional and country level activities. And we have with us Lucia. Lucia, I don't have your last name. This is terrible. Thank you. You will certainly say it better than me. So Lucia comes from very, very far, and we are really grateful because she comes from Australia, and she is the Senior Partnership and Impact Officer of the Australian Water Partnership. And having colleagues, professionals coming from so far at the Cairo Water Week is really, I think, testimony of how this Cairo Water Week is becoming really an international platform, and we all appreciate that very well. So let me start with Ambassador Shahira. And Ambassador Shahira, I have here a very long question for you, but I'll make it very short. Could you please summarize the major water policy priorities in the MENA region? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Actually, you cannot speak about water without speaking about agriculture and climate change. The Arab region is known for to be a water scarce region and a food deficient region, and one of the world's most economically, socially, and environmentally vulnerable region to climate change. Institutional and policy coordination and coherence across the water, land, agriculture can be improved with the help of coherent policies, coordination and allocation among institutions through adopting a nexus approach, which would create opportunities for better governance and management of these resources and improve human securities. The issue of food security and water security, climate change and its effect on these sectors, on the environment and on energy, including clean and renewable energy, are among the priorities of the Arab region, and Arab joint action institutions have become one of the most important main elements in the agendas of the League of Arab States. Increasing pressure on the resources and the environment, declining agricultural production, vegetation cover, loss of biodiversity, and lack of food security threatens the future of vital economic investments. Therefore, it has been realized in the Arab region that the coherent policies across water, food, and climate would lead to integration across institutions and sectors and constitutes an important contribution to sustainable development as well as political stability. So most of the Arab countries have had a long history of sectoral policies, where heavy subsidies of food, water, and energy were predominant for a variety of reasons. Policies of low pricing of resources and the lack of incentives for rationalizing resources use promoted unsustainable consumption and production patterns, leading to low resource use efficiency, overconsumption, and severe resource depletion in most of the Arab countries. Actions were adopted by the region to realize efficiency improvements in the agricultural sector, which consequently can enable water savings. A series of endeavors at the regional level took place. The Arab Summit adopted unanimously the water security strategy in the Arab region to face the challenges and future requirements for sustainable development, and an integrated water resources management project has been adopted as well. The summit also adopted the Arab Strategy for Sustainable Agricultural Development, the Emergency Program for Arab Food Security, and the Arab Aquaculture Strategy 2017-2037. On the climate issue, the Arab Framework Action Plan to deal with climate change was equally endorsed by the summit. So all the strategic frameworks for addressing these interlinked issues have been endorsed at the highest political level, which is the Arab Summit. And this is a real manifestation of the political will to upscale water action for food and climate change security. These strategic documents contain specific visions and a number of priority goals, themes, and programs that address the shortage situation to which the Arab region is subjected. Plans of implementation to transform these policies into action were prepared and are currently being implemented. The League of Arab States, through its comprehensive institutional system, is making appreciable efforts in implementing the objectives enshrined in these policies through the various Arab ministerial councils and Arab specialized organizations, with the support and participation of our partners and all stakeholders. Realizing that policy coherence, integrated management, and governance have demonstrated tangible benefits in terms of improved source use efficiency, environmental sustainability, and human security, we realize that also water issues are directly and indirectly linked to food security, human life, livelihood, and the sustainable development process, that climate change will continue to exacerbate the effect on these sectors, that improved regional coordination and cooperation can promote integrated management and governance, particularly through sharing of best practices and technologies, and that more studies and assessments are needed to fully quantify the ongoing efforts. So as a result of all this realization, the first joint meeting of Arab ministers of agriculture and ministers of water took place in Cairo on April the 4th, 2019. It adopted a Cairo Declaration, which is a key manifestation of the integrated governance of water and agriculture in the region. Of course, it did not ignore the effect of climate change. The Cairo Declaration called for the need to develop institutional coordination mechanisms and support and activate the existing mechanism between water and agricultural sector in the areas of policy, preparation, investment planning, and implementation of programs and projects to ensure food and water security in light of climate change effects and the sustainable use of land and water resources. The declaration also called for action in 4 main areas: activating regional coordination mechanism and mobilizing all stakeholders to ensure the effective implementation of new policies and investment, promoting coherence and complementarity of policies across the agriculture and water sectors, increasing investment in agricultural water management, and leverage innovation, manage and analyze data, and share experience. In the field of institutionalizing regional coordination mechanisms between the water and agricultural sector, the Joint Ministerial Council decided to hold a periodic meeting every 2 years and to establish a joint technical secretariat and the establishment of a high-level joint technical committee consisting of experts and officials from the agriculture and water ministries to follow up on the implementation of the provisions of the Cairo Declaration that meets once a year. The day after tomorrow, we have a session of this technical committee. The programs of the first phase of the executive plan, which go in a span of 2 to 3 years, were formulated to establish an enabling environment. That is to say, what is an enabling environment? Establishment of coordination mechanism, because all the countries, even in the region, we were working in silos. So we needed to make a frame. So to establish coordination mechanisms, to establish a culture of partnerships between the water and culture sectors. And I remember in one of the meetings, one of the ministers, who was the Minister of Agriculture and Water at the same time, he said that I don't talk to myself. I like this quotation. I always say it in all the meetings, but it is a manifestation of the silos we used to live in. Capacity building in the field of integrated management of the 2 sectors, the development of complementary policies and legislations. So after ensuring the availability of the appropriate enabling environment, the implementation of the joint projects at national levels, such as programs for optimal management of water and agriculture, agricultural entrepreneurship, development and adoption of agricultural techniques, rehabilitation of infrastructure, raising the level of social protection and resilience, and others will be taking place. These programs are to be reviewed and updated in the light of the implementation process, and a number of guiding principles govern the implementation, namely consistency in the policies, Arab economic integration, resource efficiency and sustainability, science policy interface, applying innovative and appropriate technologies. These criteria will be the guiding criteria in the implementation. Now let me go to the issue of food insecurity that is being witnessed today due to the war in Europe and the post-COVID-19 situation. And here I would like to recall General Assembly Resolution 67-246 entitled The State of Global Food Insecurity, adopted in May 2022. This resolution calls on the international community to provide urgent support to countries affected by the food security crisis through coordinated action. The priorities that were adopted by the United Nations are relevant to the situation in the Arab region. Today, is relevant to the Arab region today, which threatens the small steps that have been taken in policy coherence and resource use efficiency. Out of the 22 Arab countries, only 7 GCC member states have the economic means to continue in their developmental path. The region is still unable to secure its water needs. The political and social dimensions of the food crisis are exacerbating, and poverty is on the increase. And if we add to this the weak efficiency of water sector and the fact that 2/3 of the surface water resources are cross borders or shared waters, then there is the presence of Arab waters under foreign occupation, and which I am not going to elaborate on actually, and the limited yields of agricultural production and the dependence on food imports. Therefore, the implementation of this resolution in the Arab world is quite evident. It would definitely benefit Arab peoples and improve livelihood in most Arab countries. Important areas to address are supporting decision-making mechanisms and working to bring about changes within national and regional governmental institutions in terms of public policies and related legislations. Supporting the relying on science, knowledge, and interdependence between sectors. Supporting mobilizing all joint Arab actions institutions for this purpose. Adopting of a partnership approach between stakeholders. All these ways then we can continue our work in the policy coherence that is needed to address these issues. What we need is to look at future steps and focus on national and regional needs and priority issues to achieve water security in a safe and socially acceptable manner by relying on science, knowledge, and interdependence between sectors, without endangering the economy or commercial systems, while adopting a partnership approach between stakeholders. Supporting decision-making mechanisms and working to bring about changes within national and regional government institutions in terms of public policies and related legislations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us a description of all the very important work that's done through the League of Arab States in terms of governance. You listed a series of sectoral strategies, and then you showed how we try to make these strategies talk to each other. And I will also use in the future the quote from the minister who was the lucky minister who had both agriculture and water, and could not talk to himself, because I had always thought that this was a very lucky minister. But anyway, it shows the difficulty for these communities to talk to each other, and the efforts that are being done by the League of Arab States are really commendable. Now, from the governance to the finance, and I turn to Roberto. Roberto, you have worked a lot on the UFM financial strategy for water. So can you identify the primary impediments for better understanding of water-related investments in terms of water, food, and climate-related benefits? And can you bring us some positive ideas, potential opportunities, example of well-established regional and national financial mechanism?
I can see the FAO likes to put forward easy questions. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a water economist. I support the UFM. For those that don't know, the UFM is the Union for the Mediterranean. It's a political organization established, I think it was 12 years ago, by the European Union and the countries around the southern and eastern Mediterranean. It's based, headquartered in Barcelona. And one of the areas of work, of course, is water, because water is such a big priority for all Mediterranean countries. I think it's, to start with, I think it's right, the expression water-related investments. So it's not water investments, but water-related investments. And let me expand on that as I try to answer your question about the impediments. I think the first impediment is the complexity of the issue itself. So I think we could all agree that water is a support sector. If we're going to call it a sector, it's a support sector. So water investments, generate benefits in terms of health, in education, in urban development, in rural development, in energy production, in transport, in ensuring the climate resilience of our economies. So those benefits are generated by water investments. They show up in the balance sheets of the other sectors, right? But at the same time, we have that investments in those other sectors affect water resources, and increasing and changing demand patterns for water, in terms of water pollution, for example. And so we have kind of a bit of a spaghetti bowl, right? Where you have investments in water, affects the sectors. Investment in the sectors affects water, and because they affect water, they affect the other sectors as well. So what you are doing in agriculture affects, urban development through the linkage of water. So first is this complexity in itself. I think a second impediment is the lack of investment in knowledge. I mean, it was one of the, I'm going to be quoting a few of the keywords that the ambassador has been saying here, and one is knowledge. And why is that? Because why do we not know enough about the benefits of water investments in other sectors, for example? I think that's one area. It's like this investment in knowledge, and I think that's partly because if that we have a limited amount of knowledge dollars. Let's put it that way. So if you're not going to use that knowledge, you're not going to put the dollars in generating that knowledge. If you don't have, if your planning framework is not going to ask for that information to make decisions, then you're not going to invest in that knowledge. So we have, the second impediment. And of course, related to to what I just said, and again, is one of the key words that the ambassador said, is the silo approach of, I would say, the public administrations. And this is a reality that we have to accept. And and you have each sector would have, if we are lucky, each sector will have sector goals, sector policies, sector investment plan, investment programs, sector projects, and they care about the benefit that are generated in the sector, right? And I say if we are lucky, because in many countries, I'm sorry. I say if we are, that was the Deputy Secretary General of the UFM making sure I was here. I say if we are lucky because in some countries we have the sector goals and we have the projects, but we don't have the thing in the middle, right? So we even have this lack of coherence within the sector itself. And so of course if we have this silo approach, each one just cares about their own, investment plans and their own projects, there is no demand for this knowledge to try to incorporate the benefits for the other sectors. Now, what could be done about this, or what are some of the mechanisms that could be used? And I'm be focusing mostly on the investment part. That is what you are asking me to do. I think in terms of knowledge creation, I think we need to understand better how investment decisions are made, how investment priorities are set, what methodologies are currently being used to say, this project is more important than this project. So if we have limited financial resources, we're going to start here and not there. So I think that understanding those methodologies and maybe being able to put forward suggestions to improve them, that's an opportunity. And related to that is maybe some guidance on how to incorporate in that planning methodologies the cross-sectoral benefits. Right? How can you assess those benefits across sectors to help you, integrate that into your planning methodologies. But let me talk a bit about this, how to improve, our planning frameworks. Or what opportunities are there for existing planning frameworks to promote this cross-sectoral thinking and integrated investment planning. First, we have at the national level, we have the national planning process and the national budgeting process. And the national planning process usually will tell us, okay, these are the targets for each of the sectors, right? You have your national development plan, 10 years, I mean, varies from country to country. And then you'll have the national budgeting process. We'll say, okay, this is the money, the public financial resources that you have to deliver on those targets. Now, if those targets are set at exclusively at sectoral level, and that financial resources, public financial resources are allocated exclusively at the sectoral, looking at investment sector by sector, that's not improving the situation. If we could have either some money set aside for cross-sectoral projects, for cross-sectoral investment programs rather than projects, that would be an incentive for the sectors to talk together and, okay, let's try to develop a joint program because then we can access that extra amount of money. Or if the national budgeting process would give somehow, higher marks to those cross-sectoral investment programs, then again, that could be an incentive. And why should the national planning process do that? Because they care about the benefits for the country as a whole. They don't care in which sectors those benefits are being generated, right? So I think that would be an opportunity there. Of course, that escapes the realm of the water sector or the agricultural sector itself. But I just wanted to put it forward there. Now that's difficult to influence or change from a single sector, right? It may be easier when we talk about subnational planning. So this trying to have this integrated investment planning, right? So, for example, in those countries where you have block grants assigned from the Ministry of Finance to the local governments, then the local governments are going to develop their local investment programs. So that may be easier to do this integration between agriculture and water and climate, for example, because at local level it may be easier to see the interconnections. And maybe we are not talking about such big, investment programs. It's something more reduced, so it may be easier to do this integrated planning. Now, those that I just mentioned are general, concepts. Now, in the water sector in particular, we have the basin investment plans and basin investment programs, right? Where we have this is a national area, there's a river basin, and where countries like France and Spain have shown us that you can do this integrated planning at basin level, where you bring the stakeholders, including the different users, the energy sector, the agricultural sector, at the basin level, and you discuss what are the priorities for the basin. It's clear there that water is the connecting medium, and allows that discussion. And you don't always get everyone happy, and sometimes you have to take a vote, and then some people don't get approval. But that provides an opportunity for discussion and for developing an integrated investment program. Then I wanted to mention as well, going back to the national level, focusing on the water sector, where some countries have these annual sector reviews. Now, there are not many, and I'm not talking just about the Mediterranean area. I'm talking about the beyond that, where you have the sector comes together once a year to review what has happened during that year. And when I mean the sector, again, it's incorporating the energy users, the users from the energy sector, from the agricultural sector. So you can have that. That's an opportunity to discuss, okay, what's going wrong? What are the opportunities to do it better next year? Then you have the, related to that, what is that you are reviewing in those annual sector reviews? Well, I think what we need to have is these sector-wide investment plans. Some countries have investment plans that are some countries don't have investment plans. And again, I'm talking about the world as a whole. Some countries don't have sector investment plans. For some countries, the sector investment plan is just, a shopping list of projects. And for some other countries, we'll have investment plans that are, come from the objectives that they want to achieve, and what are the investment programs that are going to achieve it, and then the specific projects that are going to be the elements of those investment programs. And that process of investment planning, if it's done not as a technical exercise, but as a sector coming together exercise in a participatory and inclusive way, then it can provide the opportunity for identifying, okay, we should be including this investment program with these investment projects because they are going to generate, these benefits across the country, not just as a technical solution in the water sector. Those water investment plans usually stop at costing, how much is this going to cost us, right? And then hoping that someone will bring the money. And so it's very important that those water investment plans are coupled with a water finance strategy, where they are saying, okay, can we afford this water investment plan? Okay, this costing, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars is this going to cost over the next 5 years. Can we as a country afford it? Where is the money going to come from? Looking at, what has been the situation recently, what can we, think it's gonna happen? And if not, what are we gonna do about that? Again, it's not a technical exercise, it's a sector as a whole, because there are policy implications there. Are we gonna be looking at the water pricing, where it is in water resources management or in water supply and sanitation, or in agriculture? If we don't have, money for everything, how are we gonna decide which things are the priority? And again, that process of dialogue, of sector-wide dialogue with all the stakeholders is where it's an opportunity. Now, this is extremely hard to do for many reasons, because it goes against this technocratic culture and just the silo approach. But I think it's worth reflecting on whether, the benefits of trying to achieve this are worth the cost. That's how economists think, benefits and costs. Another opportunity, and I'm almost closing my intervention, is in some countries, the international financial institutions fund a large part of the investment programs. And so if those IFIs could come together and say, okay, I'm doing this investment in agriculture, in irrigation in this area, and you're doing this in water resource management there, does that make sense? That our support, does it make sense? Or, do we need to sit down and see whether it really, works well in terms of, where are we placing our investments, the timing of those investments, or does investment support? So I think that's an opportunity. Again, that's very hard to do. I think the European Union is starting to try to do that with the European-based financial institutions. They are at the very stages of launching this process that they call Team Europe. But that's, I think, the direction of travel. How quicker we'll get there, I'm not quite sure. I think it will depend on on all of us, on how much pressure we put into, making things happen. And maybe just to my final point here is about the UFM Financial Strategy for Water, which is, in a sense, a bit of an aspirational document, but it's very concrete. So it's a document that was developed in 2018 by the UFM member states. It's organized about 3 pillars. The first one is about adopting a strategic approach to water finance. The second is about making the most of existing financial resources. And the third is about mobilizing additional financial resources. And this is the last bit, because some people just start with the last one. Okay, we need more money. And before that, we need to think more strategically about money, and we need to make better use of our money. And in those areas is also where this issue about cross-sectoral cooperation is important, okay? When the agriculture sector is doing, certain investments, it's going to have an impact on water resources, and then it's going to demand the water resource management sector to do additional investments to serve the agriculture. That needs to be taken into account, right? So we need more cooperation there, more discussion. If when we are doing an investment downstream in terms of, I don't know, wastewater treatment, for example. Well, if we don't have the wastewater coming to the wastewater treatment plant, we are, or it's going to come only, 5 years later, then we are wasting money, right? So that in terms of, coordinating investments is pretty much there in the UFM financial strategy for water. That includes within those three pillars, 10 strategic objectives and nearly 50 actions. I mean, that strategy is kind of a menu of options because we know the situation in Mediterranean countries is very different from ones to others when we consider, also the northern Mediterranean, right? In terms of, their economies, their water demands, their capacities. So it's a menu of options. It's not a strict guide. And we think that if at the country level, at the national level, there was a discussion about, water finance and water investments that is more structured, maybe using the UFM financial strategy as a guiding principle, many of the things that we are discussing this morning could start to be solved. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. I think we have seen how much the governance and the finance aspect feed into each other and support each other. And lots of alignment between what you said and what Ambassador Shahir said. I absolutely agree that the lower you go in subnational planning, the easier it becomes. Also just because it's less people who have to deal with the same subject. What is at the national level, ministries with thousands of people becomes usually a few divisions within a regional development office where it's much easier. We see the same in organizations like FAO. Integration is easier at local level. And you can imagine that the ultimate local level is the household where everything is integrated de facto. So definitely a very interesting elements that you are proposing here. Let me now move to Lucia Gamara. And Lucia, I would like you to bring another angle, and I would like you to ask you how we can advance the role of nature-based solutions in addressing the water, climate, and food nexus, and what lessons can we bring from your region?
Thank you very much, Jean-Marc, and thank you for saying my name this time. I think I want to thank my colleagues here, the ambassador, for already pointing out that the nexus is very clear between water, food, and climate, and my colleague Roberto for pointing out the importance of joint programs. So he focused on sector-wide approaches, and I will talk about a localized approach. So when we talk about how do we advance the role of nature-based solutions, I think we have to start thinking about who is we. And that's the first lesson we have from Southeast Asia. The policies and the political will were there. So we had a couple of projects, 4 case studies to be precise, where different departments, the Department of Construction, Urban and Rural Planning, the Department of Planning and Architecture, Science and Technology, municipalities got together with the same goal. They weren't alone. They had support from the World Bank, from the Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, from the Cooperative Research of Water Sensitive Cities in Australia, the International Centre for Environmental Management, and the Australian Water Partnership where I work. You might not know about it because we're very far away. So the Australian Water Partnership is a water for development community supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. We basically match-make needs from developing countries around water and match them with over 230 Australian experts with various expertise So coming back to nature-based solutions and the lessons learned from Southeast Asia, what happened there is that they recognized that gray or conventional approaches such as building dams, building levees, wasn't enough. It was too costly and not really efficient, not really adaptable to climate change. So they turned to nature-based solutions or green infrastructure. So that's basically leveraging nature and the power that healthy ecosystems have to protect people, to optimize infrastructure, and to safeguard stable and biodiverse futures. So with that in mind, they really leveraged a crisis. So you see in the lower Mekong region, climate change impacts are mainly flooding, but you also have sea level rise, you have droughts, you have shifts in vegetation. So in 2018, between 2016 and 2018, there was a massive hit of $18 billion in infrastructure damage, as well as $16 billion lost in economic productivity. So they harnessed that loss to change the strategy. So that's the first lesson, that there was a very clear vision, policy, strategy at a very high level. Then what happened is that they couldn't just say, oh, nature's great, let's just use nature. They had to prove it. So they chose, based on different criteria such as accessibility, political will, data, capabilities, and the capacity of the places to demonstrate that this approach actually worked. And they, with the support of Australian partners and the World Bank, followed a 5-step process. The first one being understanding the urban context. Even though we are all experiencing the impacts of climate change, every city is unique. Every city has their own potential solutions and their own potential to leverage nature. So in the urban context, it was important to involve different stakeholders and really understand what is the city that we want? What are the values that we want? What are the objectives that we have from a hydrological, social, economic, environmental point of view? So once you have that, then you also need to connect it with a regional perspective. So what does our city, where does that fit upstream, downstream, and who else do we have to talk to? So there was a lot of community involved, and that's part of the second lesson that I will share with you, is that there are a lot of values. If the government had gone to it on its own, the benefit of nature-based solutions would have been marginal as compared to a gray infrastructure. But when you're considering public, private, and community values and benefits, that increases massively. The next step was assessing the risk. In this case, flooding was their biggest risk. So they had to understand what are the conditions of our system in dry season, in the wet season, and in extreme flooding. And how do those different scenarios affect the objectives that we want to reach? The next step is the solution of strategies. And this is where things get very interesting because everyone wants to pull to their side. But when you have all the valuations, all the benefits mapped out, then you can actually choose what will benefit the most people rather than benefiting only one group. So you had different things that you can do. You could either retreat in a flood, you can adapt, or you can defend. And in this case, these stakeholder groups had different sessions where they discussed what were their actual options, realistically speaking. The next step was to value this. And this is where an Australian innovation comes in place. The Water Sensitive Cities organization built a database where they assign a dollar value to non-market benefits. That is, they were able to account for intangible benefits. So we had direct, indirect costs, benefits, and risks going into a comparison, which made the process rigorous, which comes to my next key lesson. You have to follow a rigorous and transparent process, which is what we did in this case. Finally, after you have decided which is the best alternative based on the most value, and this is a benefit cost analysis, then you can decide who gets to pay. So if you have some groups that are taking the most benefits, some groups that are carrying the most cost, then you can decide what are your funding strategies. So it can be through tariffs, fees, taxes. So for example, if a nature-based solution were to reduce the flooding risk of a very industrial business area, and in turn the recreational, the amenity value increased, then they would benefit a lot. So then you could negotiate with them to share the costs of that. Then the regulatory, another key lesson is that in some cases, and as mentioned by our colleague Domitil in the previous session, you have to work with a baseline. So in some of the case studies, we work with a baseline where there was already a master plan in place. With other case studies, there was nothing to compare it with. So when there was a master's plan in place, what came to light was that some of the strategies proposed were not really in the area of the law. So for example, private companies could not invest in a green infrastructure that was related to sewage. So there was then a gap in what needed to happen and a need for reform. And then the value of these interventions was the piloting value. So what we are doing is demonstrating in a very localized, contained space how to make that process work and how you can move things forward. Did I answer your question, Jean-Marc?
Yes, you really went through a very interesting process, and I think I got a lot of points from this, the importance of valuing non-market benefits, the process by which you looked at the funding, the fact that if you look at public, private, and the community, the value of an option becomes higher. So thank you so much. It looks very much like efforts that are made also in the program on greening cities, and definitely we have a lot to learn from those pilots. Thank you so much. We had hoped to have with us our colleague from our FAO sub-regional office in Central Africa. Unfortunately, he could not travel and be with us today. But I have asked Herbert to spend 2 minutes to discuss this element that really was part of this discussion and needs to be to come in the discussion on the multi-level inclusive governance and participation for sustainable systems. 2 minutes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jean-Marc. I will be happy to maybe shed the light also on the importance of multi-level inclusion, governance, and participation. We were hoping to have a speaker that would present some of the main achievements in Africa, but unfortunately he couldn't make it to this session. So in light of the unprecedented strains that are now placed on countries, on systems resulting from the limited resources, climate change, environmental degradation, as we mentioned, the impact on marginalized groups and women are actually increasing and becoming at the forefront of the political discussion. Actually, the scale of challenge that we see cannot be resolved unless we have proper community participation and management approaches that should be utilized in order to ensure that we are overcoming the gender-based differences in ways the men, women, girls, and boys are actually affected, because there are several differences in the way that the women and men are actually impacted by different challenges, coping with different challenges, mitigating with different challenges when it comes to water scarcity, when it comes to disasters, when it comes to the environmental degradation, and even the social and the economic losses. So gender mainstreaming basically is an important process, and it focuses on assessing the implications on women and men differently, and ensuring that these differences and needs are well incorporated within the planned actions, within the legislation, the policies and programs from the beginning and from the start. And although that gender mainstreaming is not only about women, but women are usually, generally, more vulnerable to the climate effects, because they are usually working on dominating specific sectors such as the agriculture, the forestry, the fisheries, which are sensitive climate sectors. So they become more vulnerable to specific disasters and the change. And if we looked at some of the statistics that we have from different reports, for example, in the case of water scarcity, the collection of water, according to the UNICEF report, is actually 3/4 of households that has no access to drinking water. They usually task women and girls with the primary responsibility of the collection of water. Looking also at the estimated lands that are owned by women, we can see that according to the FAO report that, for example, for the Arab region, we have less than 5% of women are estimated to own lands. Female share of the agricultural holders is less than 4%, for example, in Algeria, 5% in Egypt, 4% in Morocco. And women, although women, for example, had 40% of the households in conflict settings, according to the UNEP and the UN Women report. So all these elements shows the importance of having a proper multi-level inclusive governance and action to address these challenges and those issues. Currently, we still lack the availability of data and research that are pertaining to link gender and social cohesion to the different challenges. We are still have several gaps within the collection of disaggregated data that needs always to be addressed and to be taken into consideration while developing specific projects and programs. The type of research that is required to highlight the impacts actually requires a multidisciplinary approach that combines the social experts with the water experts, with the climate change community. So it's usually very challenging also to form this type of teams who are working on complex issues. Finally, I believe that the knowledge generation also, as Roberto mentioned, in such specific issues usually lags behind, particularly if we are trying to address the intersectionalities of the issue as well, which basically means that specific vulnerable groups could be impacted by different challenges, not only one specific challenge on one specific element. This all maybe strengthen the importance of having gender transformative approaches in all of our upcoming program, and I hope that through the IRTP we can shed more light on this particular element and help in reducing this gap in the future.
Thank you so much, and you took my words. I was going to mention the need for gender transformative programs. So we have a few more minutes. I would like to hear from the audience if you have any comment, any question to our panelists. The gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Mohammed Abdulmunem. I work as a senior advisor at the regional office for the Near East North Africa of FAO. My question is to Roberto about the issue of investment in the water sector, because for us it's really have two kind of dimension. One of them, which is really private sector, is different than the public sector in terms of investment for water. And also at the same time, when you invest for drinking water, is different than the agricultural water. This is also different one. So the concept of benefit-cost ratio here, sometimes it can be misleading a little bit if you're really looking at it from the economic point of view. For example, sometimes the governments have to really invest in water projects, not for benefits, for the social, for the livelihood of the rural communities away from the water and so on. Maybe they will not get back the money, but they will build that resilience of the local communities, especially if they are very far away. So the second point is really how we really can look economically to something that is not really very clear if it is for the private sector. For example, what is really the incentive of the private sector to invest in water projects, for example, if it's really have to be related to some other things than the agriculture and so on. So please, if you can comment on that. Thank you.
I'm happy it's for Roberto, so that's, please.
Thank you for your question, for your two questions. Well, let's say that in economics, one thing is economic benefits, another is financial benefits, okay? So economic benefits includes social benefits as well. And some of what, you know, Lucia has been talking about is how do you value some of those benefits that are not covered by the market, okay? So you have markets for agricultural products. You can see there, you know, the value of, you could see the value of water, for example, you know, through trading of agricultural commodities, because that results in a price. And there are many things that don't have a price, that the market doesn't value. There are non-market values that she was referring to. And of course, we talk about, you know, those health benefits that I talked about before. When I said, you know, investment in water can produce health benefits. Now, that's not a financial benefit, okay? But it's still an economic benefit for economists. We still value that. It's something that is valuable. So it needs to be taken into account in the decision making. So absolutely, those needs to be taken into account, you know, just also because it's a human right, you know, the access to water and sanitation, right? So those social benefits are still benefits, and it should be taken into account in the decision making. And that's what I said, that we need the methodologies to see how, to what extent are those things being taken into account currently when you prioritize your water investments. Because sometimes, you know, maybe the social benefit is more than the financial benefit or the economic benefit, or the other types of benefits. So absolutely, we need to incorporate all those benefits in our decision making. We need to look at our methodologies of how do we prioritize projects. So I fully agree with you on that. Now, a different question is this, okay, the incentives for the private sector to invest in water. So you may have projects that have financial positive returns. So those are where the private sector can go in if there are other conditions as well, okay? And you can say there are other projects that the benefits are mostly social, so in principle there is no incentive for the private sector to go in because they're not gonna get, you know, a return on their investment. And that needs to be recognized by the public sector, by the government, and say, okay, where are we going to invest our public resources? Okay, those projects that are profitable, that can provide a return on investment, we need to make it possible for the private sector to invest there, knowing that they will get, you know, a return on their investment, and so they will be willing to invest there. And we need to concentrate public finance on those projects or on those components of projects that provide the social benefits that cannot be captured by the market. So you may have a project that has financial benefits and non-financial benefits, and you may want to look at how can you do public-private partnerships in the financing arrangements so that the component that's going to produce profits, financial benefits, is going to be financed by the private sector, and the component that produces the social benefits is going to finance by the public sector, by public finance. I think as long as I can go.
May I add to that?
Please, in 1 minute.
I just wanted to clarify that, of course, no valuation technique is perfect, and that the benefit cost analysis that the team used was paired up with a valuation tool, which was the one that gave dollar value, which was developed specifically for the site. For example, if the result of the investment was a wildlife reserve, and birds come in, birds will not be paying rent, but they did find a way to put that dollar value there. To the second question, I would say that, as mentioned before by Roberto, water is seen as a support sector. So we have to realize that every business, every company, everything that exists uses water. So they do have to think about their own risk. What will happen if tomorrow there's no water coming out of the tap? And so for me, that will be the incentive for them to invest.
Thank you, and I think that was a very important question, and thank you for the answers, because indeed we need to make the difference, we need to make the distinction. We cannot expect that the private sector covers all the non-financial benefits of, or the non-financial dimension of the issues, unless they work through their corporate social responsibility. They compete on the market, they need to make profit, but we can certainly, with what you have said, provide incentives for interesting action that go beyond the financial benefit. Now, I think we have a panel-to-panel question now. Would you like to ask?
No, actually, because I am not a financial person.
Oh, go ahead.
I am not a financial person, so I don't know much about finance. So I am thinking, as has been demonstrated, that requesting the private sector to invest in a sector with no profit is not going to happen. So the governments have to invest in these sectors with no return. But one thing, are there any studies that has been done to identify the benefits from investment in non-profit areas? I mean, have there been any studies to enumerate that if you invest, this is a non-profit area, regardless water or whatever, and then if you invest as a private sector, this is what you can get. Are there studies to that effect? This is the first question. The second question, which is witnessed a lot in our region now, and it is creating a lot of informal discussion, is the government competition with the private sector in getting the profits. Because governments now have started to invest in areas to get profit. Okay. Particularly in our region, So there is a threat to the private sector, more or less, and I think this is a political issue. But at the same time, the concept itself, when the government competes with the private sector. Thank you very much.
No. I think you would like to intervene, and then we can give the...
Okay, thank you very much. I am Al-Mu'taz Abadi from the Union for the Mediterranean. I thank you, Ambassador. I was very happy to be with you in Dakar. But the interesting part, I don't think that when we say about BBB that we are creating a competitive between the private sector and the government. And the study that we conducted, because you asked about study in the Union for the Mediterranean with GWB made, the OECD and EIB, it started like 5 years ago about specifically this issue. What is needed is to go from what we call it price of water to value of water, and to think how this sector will be attractive to them. The profitability here, it can be based on building utility, working on non-commercial, on a commercial non-profit approach. this commercial, non-profit approach absolutely can attract the private sector because the benefit for them will be the operation and creating jobs, making salaries, and to operate these facilities. This is one of the things. The other one is to bring fresh investment, and this investment to be guaranteed by private guarantee scheme. And this is how we do it. And to do so, it is absolutely to bring from our brain that there is no competition between the government and them, but the government should work in order to make the governance and the regulatory conducive to this, and not to regulate it with something that contractual arrangement, because maybe contractual arrangement will be business deals that will lead to some, corruption. But when put it on a regulation, and to bring that it's time to start thinking about bringing efficient people that they put €1 to have back €1, it is the time. And the problem with the public entities that sometimes they hire people for political reason also, and you find a very fat institution that have a lot of engineers based while they don't follow KPIs, key performance indicator, and the number of employees for clients. This is my point, and there is a study we can share with you, and also my advisor sitting beside you, he can maybe say more
so
things.
much.
Thank you.
And look how innovative we are. The panel asked the question and the audience responds. This is how it should be. I think we have one question here, and then we will close.
Thank you. My name is Fahad Kimero. I work with American University in Cairo. I have 2 questions. One will go to the ambassador, and one will go to Dr. Hiba. The first one, Dr. Hiba, you presented a very interesting water scarcity platform, which really I found it very, very amazing with the kind of strategy that you're putting forward. Our center at the American University in Cairo is called Center for Applied Research on the Environment and Sustainability. We work with the WEF, Water, Energy and Food Nexus. So we are a research center, and I think we would be interested if there is an opportunity to join such a platform to have our contribution. I would like to know what it takes to participate. To the ambassador, we've seen Ms. Lucia and Roberto talking about their perspectives from the EU and Australia. I would like to pose a simple question. From your opinion, what lessons do we learn? Mostly, I would be biased to Lucia's presentation, localized strategies for the MENA region. What would you think, from your opinion, would be some of the lessons that we can learn from them and a bit realistic for the region to curb the water scarcity issue? Thank you.
Thank you so much, because you helped me very much. My colleagues will give the concluding words. So Heba and then Ambassador.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, the presence of academia is one of our top priorities in the platform. So we open the opportunity for the academic research centers, universities, even individual researchers as well to be part of this platform. Particularly for organizations, you can, and research center, you can fill an expression of interest on our platform. You will find that under the partnership tab. And usually we contact the focal point who have submitted this expression of interest, and we discuss bilaterally the areas of collaboration and how to become an official partner and what type of contributions you would like to get. Now, for individuals, we also have like a registration on our platform that enables you to become part of the online forums, interactive forums, where you can actually display or disseminate your work. You can get engaged into active discussions with other colleagues, with other actors, etc. So I hope this can also help in enhancing the professional network for individuals as well. You will find all of these under our platform on the website, yes, on the link that I showed in my PowerPoint.
Thank you. Ambassador?
Thank you very much. What lessons learned? Actually, at the national level in all the Arab countries, they are working at the local level, and there are lots of projects and initiatives because the local level is the mostly touched by the water scarcity. So you will find at the national level, there are many, many projects and initiatives and policies at each national government within the Arab region. But now looking at the regional level, within the League of Arab States, we always talk national, we talk strategies, and then it is left to the countries to put it down to whichever level they feel appropriate. However, now we are starting in some of the areas, like in the area of disaster risk reduction, for example, then we are starting to address the local levels directly, and they are involved in the decision-making process in that area. But in the water sector, unfortunately not. But this can be a very good opportunity for us to start introducing the local level related to how at the local or sub-national level can we address from a regional perspective, not from a national perspective, how can we address the water scarcity issues. But at the moment, no, we don't. But it is an opportunity. It is good to hear about it. It is a best practice that can be copied. And if it is copied by one, or if it is copied in the region, because you are speaking about one country, which is Australia, and it is doing this at the national level. The Arab countries, they are doing at the national, but at the region, no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've gone a little bit beyond time. We hope you enjoyed this session. I would like to thank the conveners, the Interregional Technical Platform on Water Scarcity, and the co-conveners, the League of Arab States and the Union for Mediterranean and Australian Water Partnership. We have now plenty of ideas to strengthen the platform and to make it more lively, more focused on issues. And we have also, I think, showed how important it is to have cross-regional exchanges and learning from each other. Thank you so much, and wish you a good continuation of the day. Thank you.